How the mountains are built. The backbone of New Zealand, Southern Alps, were brought together piece by piece from the old continent of Gondwana and from the material in the bottom of the ocean. All these pieces being brought together by phenomena known as seafloor spreading, a process that constantly changing the face of our planet. Let's talk about how seafloor spreading shaped New Zealand over the last few 100 million years. First, we need to come back to the seafloor spreading concept. If we observe the world's ocean surface, we see the great system of mid-ocean ridges. This is the large crack through which magma, molten rock within the crust of the Earth, has risen from the Earth's interior and erupted to the sea floor. This magma that comes from within the bottom is caused by slow circulation within the mantle. Mantle, that's the upper part of Earth's semi-molten interior. So this flow of the mantle dragged the crust sideways away from the ridge. Piece by piece, with every eruption, this material solidified and added new basalt, a black volcanic rock, to the oceanic crust. And that's how oceanic crust characterized. We call it basalt, hard rock. At the same time, the forces are bringing this material away from the rift. Although it's moved only 10 centimeters a year, but over the long term, it can translate to enormous distances if you think in geological terms. For example, in just the time since the dinosaurs were on our planet till now, the seafloor can move the same distance as from New Zealand to Hawaii. You can imagine the effect of this spreading with time, which changing the face of our Earth. Although the main action happening within the oceanic crust, the molten lava coming up and move the plates, the real action happen where two sections of a crust are forced against each other. We can observe that the denser crust dive beneath the more buoyant crust and descend into the Earth's interior. We call it subduction, and the areas where it's happening we call subduction zones. You can see it nicely on the maps. In these places around the subduction, we find the deepest parts of the world's ocean. Watch my previous video about mid-oceanic ridges. With time, this material has been subducted under the plates, pulled downward by gravity, and helps drive the whole process of subduction and convection within the mantle. For all these remnants of sinking oceanic crust are assimilated back into the Earth's semi-molten interior hundreds of kilometers down. In the areas where these forces are occurring, we're not surprised to have intense earthquake activity. Geologists learned that by identifying the exact position and depth of each earthquake, we're able to build up a three-dimensional picture of subduction zones where it plunged into the Earth, like on this picture. As the oceanic crust sinks down a subduction zone, heating may occur and cause parts of the rock to melt. Large bodies of the molten rock may then slowly rise up through the crust above. In these areas, the volcanic eruptions occurring, and we often meet the chain of volcanic islands or a line of inland volcanoes in that places. However, the most dramatic action occur when two plates of continental crust collides. The sediments that lie on the parts of the seafloor less dense than oceanic crust and do not pass easily down a subduction zone, so it doesn't get entrapped down under. Instead, they tend to be scraped off the underlying crust and squeezed into the collision zone. These rocks rammed onto each other and pushed above the sea and eventually form mountains. We know that the highest mountains on our planet, Himalayas, been formed exactly like that. Around the Earth, moving sections of the crust do not collide but simply slide past one each other along the large folds. We know them as transform folds. These folds lie within the oceanic crust, but some cut through continental areas such as St. Andreas Fault in America's west coast or New Zealand's famous Alpine Fault. Therefore, in hollow earth divided into these plates, mosaic pieces, and boundaries between these plates are either spreading ridges or subduction zones. Or in some places we can indicate that it's transform faults, where plates slide past one another. We study that, and it's called plate tectonics, and I have numerous videos and conversations about plate tectonics. Geology is convinced that this effect was happening all the time on our planet throughout the whole history of our Earth. And we know, watch my other videos about the planets, that we find the same plate tectonics on other planets, those that are dormant, been in the past, or happening right now. Therefore, we can say that New Zealand been brought together by a seafloor spreading event. About 250 million years ago, plate tectonic play a major role in bringing various parts of New Zealand, which we observe now, together towards each other. At that time, subduction was occurring along the eastern margin of Gondwana. We know there was a chain of volcanoes. Island volcanoes, which we talked about, resides not far from the continent. And we know that a lot of material was eroded away off from the Gondwana, called the turlos material. See the part 2 of my videos about New Zealand mountains. And they built the largest submarine fans. As the sediment piled up, seafloor spreading slowly moved it towards the subduction zone when the arc sediments were accumulating. And like on a conveyor, this material was brought away. And around the times of Triassic period, the first of the sediment arrived at the subduction trench. And as we talked before, the heavy oceanic crust descended below the edge of the Gondwana, but this material, the sediment, was pushed towards it, and it was kind of beyond on top of it. It was scraped off the crust and squeezed against the sediment in the volcanic sea to the west. It lasted about 50 million years, and this material was constantly brought towards each other. We don't have so much evidence because spreading ridges in the seafloor that carry this material no longer exist, so geologists have to reconstruct it by using the analogy. Calculations suggested that by the end of the Triassic, about 200 million years ago, this sediment has formed a crumpled mass tens of kilometers thick. And the more material arrived, there was a big pile of this material in the subduction. And eventually all this compressed material was pushed above the sea level, creating a new area of land east of Gondwana coastline. There was the first stage, which we called Rangitata orogeny, named after the Rangitata river, where turles rocks are well exposed these days. We can only imagine how huge those mountains were, and we do know there was a great thickening of the crust within the base of the sedimentary stack, pushing down into the top of the mantle. We know there was a high pressure and the temperatures because these rocks eventually metamorphosed into the Haast Schist. Large areas of otago formed from this rock, and all along the main divide. Today, geologists are able to date this schist rock. We use isotopic dating to measure the time when metamorphic minerals cooled during their formation. The Haast Schist believed to be formed about 200 million to 160 million years ago, and we know it's time when the sea floor spreading and collision slowed down that moment, and the pulling up the material finished. However, what's happened straight away after that, it's not very clear. There's not enough rocks on New Zealand to give us a clue, and we know that the sediment will simply never have moved into the region when the sea floor spreading stopped. From mid-Jurassic, we have again resume of this activity, and again more turles sediment being brought to that area. And next 100 million years it will continue without stop. From mid-Jurassic to the mid-Cretaceous period, new fresh graviaceous sediment was continually scraped off the seafloor and bring towards the new land. And this material turles group, which we found from North Canterbury to East Cape. It looks similar to the old graviaceous, submarine vein graviaceous material, however mineral composition slightly differ. And it suggests they were formed in the river deltas They were being carried away from different parts of Gondwana into the ocean. Today's geology suggested that towards the first part of the Cretaceous, the collision was quite intense. And we differentiate two stages of Rangitata orogeny. Second part of it started 100 million years ago, after the first phase of the collision and uplift created Haast Schist. This schist was formed at the depths during Rangitata 1 and then pushed up by Rangitata 2, rising higher than the sea level within the crust in the south. And today we see this Haast Schist all around Otago line on the surface. This schist, which you observe along the Alpenfold, is formed during later crustal movement. About 105 million years ago, this collision mountain building Rangitata orogeny was over. The seafloor conveyor was switched off. How the seafloor conveyor was switched off, we don't know. But we know that by that time, New Zealand still wasn't as the one single continental body. It was somewhere at the edge of the Gondwana, as a combination of a Western Province rocks, turles, and arc rocks of the Eastern Province. And the new stage of evolution in New Zealand started, which we will talk in the next videos series about the New Zealand formation. Please subscribe to my channel, post some comments, likes, and share this video on your social media so my videos could be promoted and I can continue doing my work. Thank you so much.